Hi everyone, thank you for coming. So today's session is about Fiori elements versus Fiori freestyle. So we all know, I think, what is Fiori and all those things. So and there are enough information available online as well, right? What is Fiori elements and all those things. So what I am trying to tell today is from my experience of executing multiple Fiori elements projects as well as Fiori freestyle projects. So how is my experience and what are my suggestions on when you approach this problem? So with that, my introduction, I work for a company called Convergent IS, which is a product which primarily works on creating new products for SAP customers, and we also do SAP consulting because that's bread and butter, but gradually we focus more on products. And I am also an SAP mentor. So SAP mentor is kind of a tag which SAP gives for people who contribute to communities in various ways, maybe blogs, sessions like these, or books, and so on. So I'm also author of two of the certification guides by SAP Press. And I have been working in SAP technologies from 2003. So that's when I have started as a web developer. I've been working all through in various technology stack from there. Okay, so what are freestyle apps? We all know that, right? So SAP UI5 was initially released on 2011. So I was lucky to get exposed from them, because I remember working on 1.08, I believe, UI5 version. So from there I have got experience working on SAP UI5. And around 2013, SAP released the first wave of Fiori apps. That is 25 new Fiori transactional apps. It was a huge, news during those times, because people were used to SAP's boring old GUI or web intro screens, right? So the 25 new apps were like a huge news for the entire SAP community. And even SAP, or no one was really sure what is going to happen with this SAP, with these 25 apps. So will the UI completely change from the SAP GUI web intro portal world into the Fiori? Or it's like only SAP will keep on releasing maybe only for few use cases, right? So that was the thought during those days. So remember this, 2011 when UI5 was released, 2013 when first set of Fiori applications, 25 Fiori applications were released. And during those days, everyone used to develop on their own, whatever they like in UI5, wherever you want the buttons, right? Wherever you want the toolbars. But only in 2013, the Fiori design principles came out, and that basically gave few guidelines on how the user experience should be. One of the aim was to standardize the user experience, so that you do not have to train the user every time there is a new UI5 app to tell where to click, what to do, right? But still, you have a complete flexibility when you develop UI5 applications, right? You can still put the buttons, you can still put the toolbars, or whichever control you want, you can put it wherever you want, right? So even though there is Fiori guidelines, we are not really forced to follow that, right? Custom design, whenever you want some unique custom design, whenever there is a FIFA World Cup, whenever there is a COVID, vaccination, you need some unique experiences, right? So for those use cases, it really made sense. Meaning something with the splash screen, something football basically running around in the screen. So that kind of unique screens. So that really made sense. But when it comes to the enterprise world, does it really make sense? Is the question, right? You really need innovative user experiences every day. So that's when in 2016 SAP released Fiori Elements, or the first work on Fiori Elements was released in 2016. So from 2013 to 2016, SAP had released lots of Fiori apps, and SAP found that there is a pattern to all these enterprise apps, because all the Fiori apps have to work on mobile devices, have to work on tablets, have to work on desktops, right? You cannot design as you like. Because when SAP releases, it has to have a uniform user experience, right? So SAP releases all transactional apps or analytical apps. SAP found that there is a pattern to all these apps which it is developing, right? So if that is the case, why should I again write the code for a filter bar? Why should I again write a code for the table? Correct? Every app, if I'm starting from a list screen, right, where there is a filter bar on the top, there is a list, there is a table on the bottom, right? Why should developers start writing the same boilerplate code again and again? So with that thought came the Fiori elements. So what does it do? So it is built above SAP UI5, meaning it still uses completely UI5 library as we do, and it has few more libraries. It is a low-code framework. So the aim is to ensure that the time to build a Fiori application is much lesser, a low-code framework. So the UI is generated from the OData, metadata, and annotations. And more than 75% of all the SAP authored Fiori apps are getting created via Fiori elements currently, right? So that's very important to note. If this works for SAP, why not for SAP customers, right? Why we are not creating 75% of all our apps using Fiori elements? That's a big question which we have to ask. So as from my experience, it's the other way around. When customers create their own apps, it's only 25% or even less than apps are actually getting created via Fiori elements. Other than that, everything is getting created via Freestyle. Okay. So with that thought, let's get into the next slide. So I just talked about SAP finding that there is a pattern in all these applications which it is developing, right? So those patterns we call it as layouts or floor plans. So there are primarily 4 kinds of floor plans. The first one is list report. So the list report, okay, I'll go to the next screen. So this is our list report, very familiar screen, right? So this is where most of the Fiori applications start their app, start their screen, right? This is the home screen of most of the apps. So if you see here, there's going to be a set of filters, then there's going to be a table, right? And so the list report is primarily for searching a huge number of records. It might be sales orders, purchase orders, so on. And the filter is a very important part here because you're going to use the filter and fine tune the number of records which you want, and then you act on that, right? So this is called the list report. And then comes the work list. So there is a small difference between the list report and work list. So the work list is not made for huge number of records. If I go back, see the number of records is 982, or it can be even 40,000 because this is anyway lazy loaded, right? So number of records can be very, very huge in a list report. But when you come to work list, this is designed for your own work, right? Focused work. So you are, say, you are in a finance and end user in a finance department, and your work is basically to look into maybe all the invoices which were submitted yesterday, right? So you are not going to use filters and fine tune your results. Rather, your results should be what is your work list, right? As the name says. So that is a fine difference between the list report and the work list. As you see here, there are various tabs here if you want something, but there are no filters here. So there is a small difference between list report and work list. And analytical list page, this is one of as I see, not really much used unless it is analytical use cases. So here, this is pretty much like a list report, but you have graphs here. You have 2 small micro charts here and 1 big chart here with multiple options of visualizations. So this is pretty similar to list report, but you have a little more focus on analytics here. So what happens? You have a list report, you have a work list, and then you have analytical list page, and you click on one of these, and then the idea is to open an object page. So what does object page do? It gives you enough information on a particular object. What is an object? Object can be a purchase order or a sales order or an employee or a material. So this gives information about a particular object. So this is usually never the home screen. The object page is usually the second screen from a list report, object page or an analytical page. Right? So that's where you have tabs and there are various options here. And overview page, as from my experience, this is least used thing, because primarily there are various ways of building this, and as I see, there are various limitations on what you can build here. Usually, say you build something like this, customer will ask for a filter here, then filters are available, then the requirements usually explode. So what I have seen is people usually go for a freestyle in these cases. But this is, of course, this is one of the supported overview page. We call these as various cards. There are various cards available. So as to just summarize, we have a list report, we have a work list, and we have an analytical list page. From all these things, you come to the object page, and then you have an overview page which can act as a dashboard. So these are the 5 basic floor plans which are available in the Fiori elements. So you might see, why SAP thought that, SAP found that these are the most used floor plans, and then created annotations to support these. So how does the annotations work, for example, right? So if you are building a freestyle application, what you do is you create an XML view, you start with a variant management, then you create a filter bar, then you create put everything inside a VBox or various other controls, and then you put a table here. That's how you build a XML view in a freestyle applications. But in case of Fiori elements, what you do is in the metadata, you basically tell these are my filters. That's all, right? These are the columns which I require for the table. That's all. Then this screen comes automatically. Right? So that's what is basically you don't code, rather you write annotations which you require for what you need. Okay, so advantages, as we know, developer productivity, enterprise readiness, consistent user experience, right? So consistent user experience is very important, because if we develop freestyle applications as you like, then you also require training for your users when you go live, right? How to really use this. So once they are used to these Fiori elements floor plans, your users, they know where is the create button. They know where is the approve button, they know where is the edit button, right? So consistent user experience is very important. Low total cost of ownership, this is very, very important, because the cost of ownership is not only about development, it's also about maintenance, bug fixing later. So the moment you have less number of code to support, less number of bug fixes which will come, right? So more custom code means more bugs, less custom code means less bugs. So that's about total cost of ownership. But in addition to, you get few functionality as well, things like graph capability or things like locking, for example. This is one of the most requested use cases, which comes with Fiori elements. For example, if someone is working on a purchase order, someone else should not be work on the same purchase order in the edit mode, right? So if you have to build this as a custom solution, there is huge amount of custom code which you have to write, and which will not be maintainable as well. So if you want something like locking, for better data consistency and all, so Fiori elements is something which it provides out of the box. Okay, disadvantages. Right? It's not only all rainbows, there are problems as well. So slightly higher initial load. So how is Fiori elements really working? So as I said, when you write an XML view is stored in either the web server or BTP, wherever. The XML view gets downloaded into the browser, and XML view gets processed, and you see the screen. Right? But when it comes to Fiori elements, all you have is annotations and metadata which is coming to the browser, and then there is a Fiori UI5 template which is coming into play, which is parsing your annotations and creating your XML view, and then it creates the view on the browser, right? So there is an additional step during runtime. This is a runtime processing which basically happens to create your views. So there is a slightly higher initial loading time, but And usually after after the cache, this usually works faster, but still there is an additional processing time for interpreting the annotations during runtime. It's tough to debug and troubleshoot. If an annotation which you gave in the backend is not working, how to really debug? There is no easy way. The way I found is I go into SAP UI5 framework code, look into those HTML templates, search for your annotations, and see how is it really interpreted. It's not really easy. It takes lots of your time, right? You need to look into each of these smart controls, get into their rendering code, find out which annotations it is using. So it's really tough to debug and troubleshoot which when annotations are not really working. And tough to extend. So extensions are not really simple. Documentation is still not that comprehensive. It has improved tremendously in last 2 years, but still there are patches everywhere which you have to figure out as a developer or a customer. And involves a steep learning curve and lack of skilled resources. If you are a manager or someone, if you are a customer, if you want to implement something, so the number of skilled resources in Fiori elements is much lesser rather than when you say regular UI5 resource. So the people who can really understand where to write annotations, and these annotations will result in what, right? So this basically requires some cross-functional skills as well. Again, annotations can be written on app layer, annotations can be on an XML layer. There are too many ways of achieving the same thing. So lack of skills is one main concern is what I see. Please interrupt me if you guys have any questions. So yeah, how is it working? As I said, UI annotations are interpreted during the runtime, that is in browser, all the annotations which you write. And then there are of course backend annotations like maybe various validations you put as an annotation. You say that this is a number field, this is a decimal field, this number of decimal places are allowed, or say for example draft is enabled or not. So these annotations are, some are design time and some are runtime as well. You can put various validations and all. So that's how these annotations are working.
Just one question. So sometimes what happens, let's say for a date range. So what I had a requirement for showing the date pattern. Like let's say VDMM IXL, then you show the next date range.
Right.
So in if you without annotation, it says that date range, then it gives the date format, then IXL the date. If I was trying to do it UI annotation, I didn't find it. Then I had to extend it from the backend from the method, from the
MPCXT and write, yeah. So that again, that is one of the things which I was talking about, the disadvantage. There are some things.
Just one question here. So is it only can be done from the backend, or did I miss something that it could?
Yeah, it again depends on your UI5 version.
Okay.
In earlier versions, only MPCXT had it. As you come to OData V4, it is different. As you come to OData V2, it is different. So based on your UI5 versions, you can do it in manifest.json, you can do it in, as you say, in metadata. If you are in cap layer, it is different. So basically, there are various ways of achieving the things, right? If you have done in one particular ABAP version, if you go to an S4HANA version, it cannot be the same, right? So in earlier days, I actually handled that long time back, maybe 6-7 years back, by doing an MPCXT extension and saying that it is a date range, right? And then things have changed now, and now there are annotations for that as well. But again, you have to be on a particular UI5 version. And where do you find that code? Where do you find that documentation? Nowhere. You have to go and search for it. Right? And try that.
There are very limited. If you go to API documentation, there are some portions.
Yeah, there are bits and pieces everywhere. Then what really works is you go and figure out how to really debug SAP scope. That actually worked great for me in my projects. You go and figure out what annotations is it really looking for to deliver that date control. What is that called?
Date range.
Date range control, which basically gives last 10 days, last 15, that kind of thing, right? So you basically go and figure out in your UI5 version what annotation is it really looking for. Then you go and give that annotation in your backend or in the XML. So that is the only thing which work consistently for me. Rather documentations, rarely work for me.
No, I wanted to once I figure it out, I do my own document.
Yeah. Right.
Because again, doing the same research.
Correct. Yeah, that happens. But rarely you will get into the same scenario again. The same UI5 version, same backend. The next time you are in S4 HANA, some 1.71, things will change, right? But the point which you are making is very valid. Once you figure out something, if you can do documenting, that's great. But what I'm saying is in this current dynamic things, dynamic kind of projects which are coming, it's good that you are doing, but sometimes it's tough to really figure out. What I do is, for example, if I figured out the debugging mode, I write down where did I find that annotation and where did I really debug, right, for my own reference. So that next time I know where to debug. Maybe in a 1.84 or 1.108, I'll go and look into that file. Sometimes that code will be completely gone, but sometimes it really helps.
But do we need to remember all these annotations, or where can we find?
Oh yes, annotations, there are good documentations. Annotation, there are good documentations. But again, I'm saying, as the versions progress, there are new annotations which are coming. And again, a same annotation can be given in the, if there are UI annotations, it can be given in the XML view. These annotations can be given in the ABAP layer. Right? There are multiple ways, or you can, some annotations or some functionality you can tweak via manifest.json. There are multiple ways of achieving the same thing. Again, depends on V2 or V4. Are you using V2 or V4? Right? So there are various ways of doing the same thing. But it's important for me is to really figure out how is this really getting interpreted in the UI. Right? You have to get into that mode of really understanding how the Fiori Elements framework is interpreting the annotations. The moment you get into that phase, then it becomes really easy for you. Otherwise, it's all about, okay, let's go and put it on the manifest. Oh, it's not working, man. Let's go and put it on the backend. No, it's not working, man. Then you forgot to remove all the places, right? Then you go and put it in the XML. Then you have all three places, right? Then one day you think that it is working because of the backend, and then you remove the first two, and then you figure out that it's not working, right? So you get into all these things. But yeah, so the skills is what I'm saying. So you have to be really good at, even though it looks like a low-code tool, but ultimately you have to be very skilled to be really successful in using Fiori elements.
Is it possible to refer the standard SAP apps, how they are doing?
Oh yeah, that is one another way.
How?
But again, in your same version, you have to go and figure out, right?
Okay, same version, I have a standard app which has
Yeah,
some functionality.
correct.
And same I want to achieve in my custom application.
Yeah, so then you go and figure out which annotation is actually doing that. And where is that annotation coming? Is it there in the XML view of the standard app, or is it coming from the ABAP backend? Then you go to the CDS view and figure out, where is it
If
coming
it is
from.
CDS view, we can directly go there. But if it is in XML, how we can refer it?
Yeah, when it comes to the UI, right? So if it is in the XML view, metadata comes and XML annotations also come there
Okay.
as a separate file.
So we have to debug in a browser.
Yeah, you have to debug in the browser.
In the network, you will see that.
In the network tab, you will see annotation.xml. Usually that's how annotation, front-end annotations are named. Annotation.xml,
Okay.
right? So you basically figure out where is this annotation coming from. Before that, you have to figure out which annotation is actually doing that, right? So, and the point I am trying to drive is, even though it looks simple, just by putting an annotation, something works. When you actually get into a production, project, you actually people might think that, and a regular developer might think that it's very easy. Okay, I'll go and put it here, it's working there, right? Actually, there are some more requirements for which you really have to figure out how these annotations are getting interpreted. Right? I'm running short of time. I will move a little faster. So extensions. So again, extensions, we are hitting the same point again. So if you are extending an SAP delivered Fiori application, there are two options: adaptation projects, and there are UI5 extensions which are available. There are controller extensions as well for all SAP delivered Fiori elements application. But so the other way is you go and use VS Code or BAS and generate Fiori elements application, and all you have is manifest.json, and then you have to extend some functionality, right? Then you have two parts here, whether you are using Oreta V2 or V4. If it is V2, go and figure out if something is possible in manifest.json. If not, there is an extension API in your UI. Try that. If not, then you go to the controller and all those other types. If you are using OData v4, then again manifest.json, which is the first thing to consider. And then if it's OData v4, there is something called as flexible programming model, which comes into your help. And this is also alternative to the smart controls in the V2 world. But it is available again only from 1.91. 1.91 means that you need to have S4HANA on-premise 2021, right? So that's a limitation, or that's a requirement. Then again, extension API and code extensions. So the flexible programming model is something which you can upskill yourself, so that because things are moving towards OData v4 pretty soon. The moment you move into on-premise 2021.
If we extend standard apps, does SAP support during upgrades?
Yeah.
So
If you use adaptation projects.
okay. So anything we can extend or any limitations?
Yeah, adaptation projects of course comes with its own limitations.
And what is the main difference between V2 and V4?
OData v2 and OData v4, these are two separate specifications of OData. In OData v2, you get a detailed metadata. In OData v4, they have optimized the OData specification. Things like, say you call for some improvements which I'm talking about. You ask for an entity set, it basically gives you the huge number of details. In OData v4, they have basically shortened it. Only the required JSON it is going to give you, like a REST OData service. So basically, OData v4 has an improvement of OData v2. In terms of payload, in terms of how you call the URL. Basically, it is a specification, and this is an improvement on OData v2.
Because we only use V2, we never use V4.
Okay, yeah, that's why I'm saying from starting from S4HANA 2021, v4 is recommended by SAP.
V4 is always recommended for code-based implementation, or we can use HTTP?
With OData v4 S4HANA, then the RAP comes into play here. RAP. If you are talking about ABAP, it is RAP, RESTful Application Programming Model. Or if you are on BTP, CAP comes into play.
So functionality wise, both are same.
Functionality wise, the way you call them,
Okay.
right? In SAP UI5, you have two separate models, right? OData v2 and OData
Yeah,
v4,
we get that
right?
down.
So that's where the difference is.
Can I add? So there at V2, V4, so again, JSON and XML are supported. I think V4 primarily JSON is more prioritized. And then we call it containment. So we have an expanded entity set, right? From a header view, you go to an item thing. So for that, you have to access the header and then go to the expanded entity set kind of thing. But in V4, you can directly access the content. You do not have, they call it containers. You can directly access the item part via the URL. So that is again an added advantage.
Yeah, basically an improved specifications based on their experience. Okay, development efforts, as I just talked about, if it is a freestyle development, so there is a huge initial development, and as the complexity improves, the development effort also improves, the development effort also increases, and Fiori elements, it's easy to get started, but the moment extension comes into play, the effort increases tremendously. So that is something which you have to keep in mind. And this is image credit sap.com, so you can take it seriously. Okay, so from a real life experience, so I've been working in Fiori elements for the last 2 years. Sorry, I do not have enough time. Maybe I will quickly try to wrap up. So from a real life experience, I've worked on multiple Fiori elements projects for the last 2 to 3 years. And so in this case, so we had to create a new business object. But you create a new business object like a sales order or purchase order. Then once you create it, you do a CRUD, right? Create, read, update, delete. So then I thought it's an ideal project for a Fiori elements because you need a list report, you click on it, object page opens, edit, update it, right? So I was an application architect, I took this decision when this really happened. And in terms of effort, usually, think about your projects, usually you have one UI5 developer and one backend developer in all your projects. If your project requires 4 UI5 developers, it usually means that you require 4 ABAP developers as well, right? So that's my experience as well. But in this project, I had 6 backend developers and only 1 UI5 developer. So that itself is around 40% huge savings for us, right? In spite of all this documentation, pain and all these things, so there was a huge savings in terms of UI development right away, right? So that also talks about future of UI5 developers, right? Think about it.
Anything can we do something in the freestyle which we cannot do in Fiori?
Yeah, and freestyle, it is freestyle. You can do whatever you want, right? So Fiori elements, as I said, there are limitations. Moment you want extensions, then the complexity increases, effort estimate increases, debugging increases.
Customer goals and all.
Yeah. So that itself, I'm just racing ahead now. So, okay, so I did that Fiori Elements projects, and one of the customer's requirement was to bolden all the labels of form elements. Such a simple requirement, and there are no annotations for it. Right? One such example, just for your question. You cannot bolden a label in a Fiori Elements application. I was the application architect who took the decision, all go with Fiori Elements. I was invited to PMO and I had given this architectural document much earlier and got it approved. And they asked me, why did you choose such a framework which cannot bolden a label? Right? Such a valid question, isn't it? We have this X million project and you are saying me you cannot bolden a label? I could have done it using custom CSS, but that is not really recommended, right? And it's not really, I'm going away from the Fiori Elements framework. I have to explain that to them. But again, these are leadership roles which they did not really like. When I said that, I can do that, I will go and use a CSS class for it, right? And then I will do it. But it is, when you do an upgrade, you might have to retouch that. They did not like that, right? Because in freestyle application, for a label, there is a property which will bolden it, right? So such things will happen. So how can you really stop it? That is one small thing that really got escalated. That in such a huge million project, you cannot bolden a label, right? So that really happens. So that's why I'm saying, if you're a customer or a partner who is doing that, ask your partner to specify the framework. Are you using Freestyle or are you using Fiori Elements? If you are a customer or if you are a partner and you're proposing something, you have to specify that in your SOW. If you are not doing that, and you can also specify that we are bound by limitations of the Fiori Elements, because you are specifying that in the SOW, not during the application architecture, right? And then you have your design team, right? I don't know how your teams work. We have design team which works on design thinking sessions, and then they create a fancy, nice UI which suits customers' requirement. If they are not aware of Fiori Elements, they will create a nice fancy application, right? Nice fancy UI mockup for you. When you come as an application architect on a S4HANA project, how will you really realize that, right? So that is the very important thing. So it's one thing about upskilling yourself about Fiori Elements, but unless you take care of these things, you will really do difficult. And if you are a development or architect, try to get involved earlier in the project. Not when after SOW is signed, now you are coming into play. No, that won't work. If you are a developer, you are coming and then you are designing, okay, I'm going to use Fiori Elements. Think about that. Can you really do that? Because you will be shooting it on your leg for later if you do that. And if you are doing that, get your customer onboarded right away. That is my message here. In the SOW phase, we have to tell the customer. But why will the customer agree? Because where is the savings? Unless you show the savings to the customer will not agree, right? You have to tell him that if I'm using Freestyle, if I'm using Fiori Elements, these are the efforts, right? Or you have to convince the customer that this is SAP recommended approach. You are on S4HANA. You are not supposed to create SEGW gateway projects. You are supposed to use ABAP programming model, or you are supposed to use CAP, or you are supposed to use RAP. Get them onboarded in the SOW phase itself and specify that you are using Fiori Elements framework and you are bound by the limitations of that. That's how you can ensure that the project is in the right phase later. It's not only about saving yourself, it's also about getting the customer aligned right.
So how you solve that board thing? You have implemented Freestyle or?
No, I just went ahead and say that this is not possible, this is not recommended by SAP, and that's how that ran through. But I had to go through that stress that, believe me, I couldn't actually sleep on at least on a night. And that was one case. There are many other cases.
Yeah.
So some cases I could achieve using Fiori Elements extensions.
Okay.
Right? Some cases I could extensions which are supported by SAP.
Yeah.
Right? In some cases like Bold, there is no support even for extensions.
Yes.
You actually have to get all the controls, get the label, and set properly bold for each of all these monkey patching which I do, which I didn't really like. So label I was able to convince, but there were some other cases where I had to go for complicated Fiori Elements extensions. Okay, when to use Fiori Elements? For sure, think about you are building a product. You are a partner and you are building a product, and then you are like SAP, right? This is my product, use it. Right? SAP is not really asking customers whether should I go for Fiori Elements or should I go for Fiori. If you are building a product yourself because you want to reduce the maintenance of that product, I would say go and use the Fiori Elements. If it is a transactional app, most of the times those frameworks will fit, go and use Fiori Elements. If the backend is S4HANA or CAP, go and use Fiori Elements. That should be our default goal, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, when not to use, if the backend is REST API, there is no metadata, what will annotations do? Right? Offline requirement, Fiori Elements can't do it. Exceptional UIs, when I say exceptional, unique UIs, right? As I said, COVID application, kind of vaccination application, a football application, something for demo. Exceptional UIs, don't use that. If the backend is ECC, and this is just my suggestion, and none of these are SAP suggestions, as you likely have older UI5 versions, again you will get into lots of problems the moment you use Fiori Elements. So that is my recommendation, not to go for Elements if you are on ECC, because likely you have 1.71 or earlier. Okay, what tools to use? You all know this one as well, right? So we all use VS Code, Eclipse, but now we are all talking about why we are talking about Fiori Elements and Fiori Freestyle, because we want to increase the productivity, right? And ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot, right? That's changing things drastically. So I have included that because it is time for all the developers or all the organizations to think about the approaches, how things are dramatically changing. So we are talking about improve the productivity. Today I can go and tell ChatGPT, create me one single application which has a list report, which has a filter on the bottom, create a very good prompt, it will give you in a minute, right? So things might change drastically in coming days due to ChatGPT, various LLM models, during using GitHub Copilot, things might change. Keep an eye on those things as well as you learn Freestyle versus Fiori Elements. Okay, with that note, thank you. Any questions? Please feel free to ask.
How to get started with the ChatGPT?
That's a different, different topic altogether. You can just Google ChatGPT. So there are various ways of code generation. There is a thing called GitHub Copilot, which I think everyone should start using it at least. Or there is something called as Code GPT, which is available on VS Code. So all these are developer productivity increasing tools. Right? So we should start using them, because you are in this session means that you are interested in improving developer productivity. So those are the next frontiers, I think, which will come into force pretty soon. So just with that note, I want to end the session. Yeah.
Generally,
One moment. You have few 5 minutes?
No, last time this.
Lunchtime. Okay. Okay. Unless you are hungry.
So, like in your projects, do you usually have a team that designs it?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you about my project.
Yeah. You want to stop?
We don't have design teams.